Okay, I think we can start now. A wonderful evening to all from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. I'm very excited to impart new things for tonight's discussion in our Drug-Free Philippines movement. Our topic for tonight is all about International Anti-Corruption Day in celebration with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. You right, you rule, say no to corruption. It is related to our current situation here in the Philippines, and that is why we should address these issues. But before we proceed, I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Here with us tonight is Atty Sesinio Belen Jr. Our speaker will discuss how corruption affects all areas of society. Preventing corruption unlocks progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, helps protect our planet, creates jobs, achieve gender equality, and secures wider access to essential services such as healthcare and education. While it is everyone's right to benefit from strong anti-corruption efforts, misconduct and wrongdoing is stealing away valuable resources at a time when they are most needed to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 crisis. The 2021 International Anti-Corruption Day 6 highlights the rights and responsibility of everyone, including state, government officials, civil servants, law enforcement officers, media representative, the private sector, which is us, civil society, academia, and the public and youth in tackling corruption. And yet, it is not only countries that need to unite and face this global problem with shared responsibility. Every single person, young and old, has a role to play to prevent and counter corruption in order to promote resilience and integrity at all levels of society. To achieve this, policies, systems, and measures need to be in place for people to be able to speak up and say no to corruption. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption emphasizes that the responsibility of governments to put in place effective whistleblowers protection to ensure the persons who speak up are protected from retaliations. These measures contribute to effective, accountable, and transparent institutions toward a culture of integrity and fairness. Campaign 2021. A 6-week campaign starting at the beginning of November aims to highlight the role of key stakeholders and individuals in preventing the countering corruption in line with the theme, You're Right, You Rule, Say No to Corruption. Each week will focus on one of these key topics: education and youth, sports, gender, private sector, COVID-19, international cooperation. So yun po yung mga programa ng United Nations this November. The campaign also aims to share good practices and examples of preventing and countering corruption worldwide through strengthening international cooperation against corruption, tackling linkages with other forms of crime, excuse me, enabling the recovery and return of stolen assets, developing innovation solutions, advancing prevention through education, leveraging youth engagement, and mobilizing allies in civil society, academia, and private sector. Reducing the risk of mismanagement and corruption during the pandemic requires the involvement of strong anti-corruption bodies, better oversight over emergency support packages, more open, the transparent public procurement, and enhances anti-corruption compliance by the private sector. In addition, countries also need to ensure support to the protection for whistleblowers and journalists uncovering corruption during the pandemic, as well as bring their national anti-corruption framework in line with the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, or UNCAC. Excuse me. Background. Corruption is a complex social, political, and economic phenomenon that affects all countries. Corruption undermines democratic institutions, slows economic development, and contributes to governmental instability. Corruption attacks the foundation of democratic institutions by distorting electoral processes, perverting the rule of law and creating bureaucratic quagmires whose only reason for existing is to soliciting or bribes. Economic development is stunted because foreign direct investment is discouraged and small businesses within the country often find it impossible to overcome the startup cost required because of corruption. On 31 October 2003, General Assembly adopted the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and requested that the Secretary General designated the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, as Secretariat for the Convention Conference of State Parties Resolution 58-4. The Assembly also designated 9th of December as International Anti-Corruption Day to raise awareness of corruption and of the rule or convention in combating the preventing it. The convention entered into force in December 2005. Governments and private sector non-government organizations, the media, and citizens around the world are joining forces to fight this crime. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, are at the forefront of these efforts. Allow me to introduce Assistant City Prosecutor at the Department of Justice, Legal Counsel at the PAC or Philippine Anti-Corruption Commission, Assistant Special Prosecutor at the Office of the Ombudsman. Please welcome Atty Sesinio Belen Jr. Go ahead, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Atty Sesinio Belen Jr. Currently, I am a public prosecutor with the Department of Justice. I have been in the practice of law for 16 years, and my core specialty is on anti-corruption because I work for the Office of the Ombudsman for 4 years as a special prosecutor, where I prosecuted high-ranking government officials before the Sandigan Bayan. And aside from being appointed as a state prosecutor with the Department of Justice, I was also designated by our Secretary of Justice Guevara in the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission to be one of its law. I'm entering my 9th year or maybe 10 in the government service, and later on I'll be leaving the service to engage in business and corporate practice and perhaps some litigation also if I miss one. So, Sir Mark, thank you for inviting me, and nice to meet all of you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, attorney, you are very much welcome here in our program. Let me also introduce myself. I am Mark Cadile, your host in Drug-Free Philippines Movement and the CEO of Orient Visa and Immigration Services and the Vice President of People's Volunteer Against Illegal Drugs. First of all, I would like to introduce Orient Visa and Immigration Services. A part of Corporator's mission statement is to use our gain to make a social impact. We are making a social impact today through our social impact initiatives. We would like to do more, and that is one of the major reasons why we are driving the profits valuation of the company. We aim to be a self-funded unicorn and hope to effect a real social impact on a nationwide scale. While we are working toward our goals, we are bringing life, light, and hope to a few fellow beings through our CSR programs or corporate social responsibility programs. At Corporator, the distribution of our gains is part of our mission, with intrinsic desire to promote societal well-being, and the founders at Corporators are embedded with a strong sense of social responsibility that deliver lasting benefits to people, communities, and markets. Our Orient Visa CSR Projects Philippines was chosen as the key initiative where our gains are used to provide quality education, healthcare, and livelihood to the unprivileged who would otherwise continue to be peripheries of the social fabric. Corporators will be active in partnership with NGOs or non-government organization, which is People's Volunteer Against Illegal Drugs, that helps communities to come out of social exclusion through education, health, and livelihood programs, thereby touching many lives and opening windows of opportunities. Our CSR project will expand its footprints across the Philippines and among rural communities in the country. CSR project will give a voice to those who are discriminated, those whose rights are denied, those who have no access to government schemes, and makes their voices heard. Our CSR project concentrate on providing quality education, healthcare, and livelihood to the underprivileged society. We will discuss example of corruption. According to the Manila Times, dated February 27, 2014, matagal na ito, pero ito yung pinaka-the best example para maintindihan nyo kung anong ibig sabihin sa mga issues na dinidiscuss natin ngayon. According to Erwin Tulfo, a farmer from Cuyapo, Nueva Ecija, wrote this columnist to inform me, refers to Erwin Tulfo, about a ghost project in the areas worth 30 million. Okay, ang laki. The farmer who begged not to be identified was one of the supposed beneficiaries of the livelihood fund that was allegedly used in cattle and goat raising. He said they were asked to sign a document before the May 2013 elections to show that they belong to a cooperative and that they have received several heads of livestock under the town's livelihood program. A certain Evelyn Miranda was said to have facilitated the release of funds from the Department of Agriculture, DA, but the money did not reach to poor farmers of Cuyapo. The farmers also blame Mayor Amado Jong Corpus for telling them to sign the document and assuring them that they will receive the promised livestock after election. To cut the story short, the election came and went, but the poor farmers did not receive the promised livelihood from Mayor Corpus, nor from the non-government organization or NGO of Miranda. They were duped. Okay, ganito pala guys. Meron palang mga tao, okay, na nag-ambisyon na maging leader o maging mayor o maging congressman sa bansa natin. Kaya lang, minsan nabubulag sila sa pera. Okay? Totoo pala yung kasabihan na money is the root of all evil. Kasi maiba yung pananaw mo. Yung prinsipyo mo mapalitan ng pera. Okay? Ganito pala yung guys, ghost project. Okay. Let us ask ourselves, are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution? Okay guys, ito pala yung UN kasi ito yung program nila. Okay? Nakikilahok lang tayo sa kanilang programa this November. Okay. Meron pala ito silang sumbungan. Okay? As what I have said, yung mga misconduct or wrongdoing. Okay? Pwede pala ito i-report. Okay? Yung mga tauhan mismo ng UN na nag-engage ng mga kababalaghan. Okay? Like this ghost project, yung example natin sa corruption na nangyayari dito sa Pilipinas. Meron palang isang office doon sa main office nila doon sa New York. Okay? Nasumbungan. Okay? Isang investigative division. Okay? Itong opisina na to, puro lang talaga to sa investigation, okay, sa mga misconduct sa mga personnel nila. Okay, meron pa lang mga tauhan itong United Nations na sangkot sa mga anomalya, okay? So, kaya ginawa nila tong investigation division. Okay? Okay, i-discuss na natin ha. Ang pangalan nito ay Office of the Internal Oversight Services or OIOS. Takes all the reports of possible wrongdoing seriously. According to OIOS, has established this reporting facility to provide a confidential mechanism for individuals wishing to report, okay, waste fund mismanagement, sexual harassment, or other types of misconduct. The investigative or investigations divisions reviews all the reports of the possible wrongdoing and receives to determine whether the report is receivable for investigation. The division has discretionary authority to decide which matters to investigate and where suitable may also decide to refer a report to another entity for appropriate action, including investigation. Anyone with information regarding possible wrongdoing where it involves United Nations property, assets, personnel, okay, in vendors or implementing partners is strongly encouraged to report the matter to the investigations division using the report wrongdoing. In submitting your report, please attempt to answer all the questions to the best of your ability and try to be as specific, as detailed as possible. Wrongdoing that may be reported using this reporting facility includes fraud and corruption, for example, misrepresentation, forgery, or false certification in connection with any official claim or benefit, theft, embezzlement, solicitation, acceptance of bribes, extortion, and or smuggling. Ito pala guys, yung mga forgery, yung mga faking dokumento, okay? Yun na yun guys, yung tinatawag nating ghost projects, okay? Meron kasing iba, ginawang money making. Gumagawa-gawa sila ng report doon sa UN na may mga beneficiaries na hindi pala totoo. Para lang para lang magkaroon na sila ng money making, okay? For more information, see the United Nations Secretariat Information Circular on Anti-Fraud and Anti-Corruption for mishandling of contract obligations and relations with the third parties leading to loss of property or assets or generating liabilities for the organization. Conflict of interest such as failure to disclose an interest or relationship with a third party might benefit from a decision in which the staff members takes part. Unauthorized outside activities, procurement violations, misuse of ICT resources, misuse of funding to implementing partners, and other violation of UN regulation, rules, and administrative issuances. Okay? Okay guys, this is the moment that we have been waiting for. Let us hear also the discussion of our guest and co-host. May we call on, please welcome, Atty Sesinio Belen Jr. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening once again. Without further ado, I would like to discuss now the topic that Mark requested me to discuss, since we are celebrating International Anti-Corruption Day. Mark, can you please share my screen? I'm sorry, the slides that I shared to you last night.
Okay. Sir Dennis.
Si Sir Dennis ba? Okay. Sir Dennis, thank you so much for being my operator tonight. Okay. Our theme for tonight's discussion is your right, your role, say no to corruption. Next slide, please. According to the Ombudsman, in year 2019, the Philippines is losing 700 billion a year due to corruption. Imagine, this money should have been used in building schools to improve the quality of our education. This money could have been used to build bridges or farm-to-market roads to facilitate the smooth travel of farmers from their farms to the market. This money could have been used to improve our healthcare system. Instead, this money went to the pockets of the corrupt. Sadly, it's a lot of money. It could have been used to further our society, to further our economy. According to Transparency International 2021, corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Please note, ladies and gentlemen, that corruption is not just exclusive to government, but also to private sector as well. According to Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, corruption is an insidious plague that has a wide range of corrosive effects on societies. It undermines democracy and the rule of law, leads to violations of human rights, distorts markets, erode the quality of life, and allows organized crime, terrorism, and other threats to human security to flourish. This statement of Kofi Annan is still relevant today. And in fact, I will discuss the reasons why, and I will discuss why these statements are true even up to today. Now let's discuss first some forms of corruption. This is very common, paying bribes to access public services. For example, if you are to get your driver's license at LTO and you wouldn't want to queue or fall in line, you can simply ask a fixer who knows someone inside the LTO office to facilitate your application and processing of license so that you can have it issued in your favor while dispensing the other requirements such as seminar. Nowadays, LTO requires seminar for I think 36 or 50 hours. They just added this requirement in order to ascertain the qualification of the drivers. However, due to corruption, this requirement may be dispensed with by not just the public officer involved, but also the public who is willing to pay the said bribe. Second is money laundering schemes. As we all know, money laundering is the act of using the money sourced from illegal source or came from illegal source and transfer it to other jurisdiction. Like for example, if someone is an illegal pusher or money launderer in the United States, and he or she wants to transfer this sum of money to the Philippines through or via bank transfer, this is money laundering because, as I've said, the money was sourced from illegal activities. And next is kickbacks from government contracts. Again, this is very common. When I was still with the Office of the Ombudsman, I used to prosecute these kinds of offenses. Mayors or budget officers or treasurers being prosecuted because of the kickbacks that they acquired from the contracts that the local government has awarded to the contractor, and then favoring a particular person or entity to implement projects over the other who is more capable in terms of experience, resources, and manpower. This is very common nowadays. In fact, the Senate is investigating a very big transaction right now involving billions of pesos, wherein this corporation with meager capitalization was able to bag billions of contracts or billions worth of contract from the Philippine government. So this is really highly controversial considering that we are in the pandemic right now. I don't know what will happen next because as of now, the investigation is not yet terminated. Sexual extortion. This is also another form of corruption. Although the Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act does not mention sexual extortion, but I think we should consider sexual extortion as a form of corruption. Why? Because in this situation, an employer or the head of office who has the power to appoint demands sexual favor from the applicant or would-be employee, that is already a form of corruption because that is an abuse of power. And it's also not just limited to the government. It can also be in the private sector. There is this manager extorting sexual favor from the employee in order for a favorable recommendation, for promotion, things like that. And it's also a form of corruption. And of course, vote buying. Again, this is common in our jurisdiction. In fact, right now, it's election season, although it's not yet officially election period. We can see some politicians nowadays running for national office, giving money to residents of the place where he or she is visiting. Sadly, under our Omnibus Election Code, the giving of money is not yet vote buying per se, because it's not yet election period. And the election period will start in February 2022, February 18, 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So right now, since the date has not yet come, politicians can give money to the people. Obviously, it is being done for what? To court them to vote for them, right? I hope that our brilliant congressmen and senators will amend the Omnibus Election Code to include the giving of money, or not just money, but any goods or material benefit to the voters, even outside of the election period, would tantamount to vote buying. And let's go now to cost of corruption. Earlier, I discussed forms of corruption, and those are not exclusive. There are many ways of how corruption can be committed. And I just mentioned some because of our limited time. I was only given 30 minutes to an hour. That's the maximum. So I have to limit my discussions, although I am tempted to
Okay lang.
include all.
Okay lang, attorney.
It's okay. It's
You can
okay.
take your time.
And then let's go to cost of corruption. Corruption can cost your livelihood. Corruption can cost your livelihood. For example, a business permit. If you are an entrepreneur and you are applying for a business permit, and someone from City Hall demands money from you so that you can be issued sanitary permit, building permit, and any other permit that is required in order for you to be issued business license from the office of the city mayor, right? And if you do not pay these public officers the money that they are extorting from you, you may not pursue your business after all, because you cannot proceed with your business without the business permit or license. So it could really cost you your livelihood. One example also is, if you are now operating your business and police officers or maybe personnel from local or national government would visit your office and extort you money, and if you would not give in to their demands, they would do everything in their powers to shut your business down. And again, this would cost your livelihood if you would give in. If you would not, it is also the reason which your livelihood may also fail. So it's a two-edged sword. Whether you pay or not, it could cost your livelihood. That's the effect of corruption. Another thing, corruption can cost your health. How? Again, we are in the pandemic, and sadly, some hospitals are not honoring the members of PhilHealth, because PhilHealth has billion peso obligations with several hospitals across the Philippines. And of course, being Filipino, having a meager income, we cannot afford to pay all of our hospital bills, especially now. The COVID rate even in public hospital is quite high. So it's really difficult for ordinary Juan de la Cruz to shoulder the hospital expenses if they acquired COVID-19 virus. And because of corruption, the hospital would not honor the PhilHealth card anymore, because, as we all know, a few years ago, there was a massive corruption that was discovered in the PhilHealth. Next slide, please. Corruption can cost your freedom. Example, if you are being sued in a criminal case, for example, though you are innocent, but the private complainant in this case bribe a magistrate or a judge to convict you, definitely you would lose your freedom, especially if the case is non-bailable, like rape or murder or carnapping, perhaps human trafficking. Those are non-bailable offenses. Even if, for example, you appeal in the Court of Appeals and you succeeded, the fact that you have been incarcerated for a few years and you lost your years of your life doing something productive rather than being incarcerated, you have already lost your freedom, and that is corruption. Another thing, if for example you reported a crime to the Philippine National Police or NBI and they would not act upon it unless you bribe them or you would give them padulas, that is corruption, and it could cost your life, right? It could cost your freedom. Next slide, please. Corruption erodes democratic freedom, rule of law, and trust in government. In fact, some people, if not most, has already lost trust in our police force because of the magnitude of corruption within the ranks of PNP personnel and even to the AFP. A few years ago, the Pabaan system was discovered, wherein the AFP chief of staff was given huge amount of money upon retirement. I think same thing with the PNP Director General. Upon his retirement, he would be given huge amount of money, even beyond the retirement pay allowable by law. So that is corruption. And these instances has already eroded the trust of the citizenry to this agency, to the law enforcement, even to the congressmen or senators who have been involved in huge pork barrel scam. We already lost trust to them. And this is quite difficult because it's endemic. Although the Supreme Court has declared already that the pork barrel is unconstitutional, some, I heard, and some personally I knew, that they were able to still get funds from the government and allocate it to their favored contractors for, of course, kickback. Corruption reduces your chances for a healthy environment and sustainable future. The example of this is if the government has allocated budget for the lowering of carbon emission, and instead of engaging in projects that would lower the carbon emission in our environment, the public officers concerned has used this money or pocketed this money for their own personal benefit. And that is, again, corruption. Next slide, please. In 2021, the Transparency International conducted a global corruption barometer. And out of 17,000 respondents, the Philippines ranked 6th. We got 86% as one of the most corrupt in Asia. Imagine we are 86th. It's quite high, actually. So we are one of the most corrupt countries in Asia, according to the survey. Next slide, please. Worldwide, the Philippines ranked 115th in the world for the Corruption Perceptions Index. This is where the Transparency International ranks the countries around the world from least corrupt to most corrupt. And according to the survey, the least corrupt is New Zealand, followed by Denmark, followed by Singapore. These least corrupt countries are those in yellow colors, as seen in our infographics. The most corrupt are those from red to maroon colors. Sadly, we are already in red color. We rank 115. So we are one of the most corrupt in the world, according to this Corruption Perception Index. Next slide, please. Again, the corruption barometer for Asia states that percentage of the citizens who think most or all people in the following institutions are corrupt are, ang top notch po dyan, the senators or members of Congress, 32%. Meaning 32% of the people think that senators and congressmen are corrupt. And 30% of the respondents think that local government councilors are corrupt. 26% think that president or prime minister is corrupt. Government officials, that is in general, outside of the armed forces, 26% of them are corrupt. Or sorry, 26% of the respondents believe that these government officials are corrupt. And tied with the police force, followed by business executives, the respondents believe, 24% of them, thinks that business executives are corrupt, and these are in private sector. Followed by judges and magistrates, 18%, NGOs, 16%. We were shocked before, I think 2 years ago, when this lady who manages to have several NGOs and pocketed billions of pesos because of her connivance with our congressmen, senators, has accumulated a lot of fortune. So we know who that woman is. And then army leaders, 14%, religious leaders, take note, religious leaders. And this is not just in the form of money, but also sexual exploitation. Sadly, leaders of the church, some leaders of the church were involved in this sexual activity wherein they would abuse children, minors, children of tender age. So sadly, this is happening still nowadays. Then bankers, 13%. Next slide, please. According to the survey conducted by the Transparency International, 1 of 3 people in the government are corrupt. 1 of 5 Asians paid a bribe. And 1 of 7 people are offered bribes in exchange of votes for the past 5 years. However, 62% think that ordinary people can make a difference in the fight against corruption. And we are this ordinary people. Well, at least this is a positive news. I am thankful that out of these 17,000 respondents, 62% of them think that we, ordinary people, can make a difference in the fight against corruption. We still have hope. Next slide, please. My question is, are you one of these ordinary people? Are we? Are we? I believe so. And I have put here some of the recommendations on how to fight corruption. First, empower and engage citizens in the fight against corruption and ensure they can report corruption without fear or retaliation. This is quite a difficult recommendation, actually. In fact, when I was special prosecutor in the office of the ombudsman, I tried a case involving a mayor somewhere in the north. The complainant has already testified. However, when the mayor knew that his case will be decided not on his favor, he gunned down the complainant. Of course, he was not personally the one who gunned down the complainant, but of course he asked someone else. Thankfully, the complainant has already testified and the mayor was convicted. Sadly, the complainant has died because he was assassinated. And can we go back to that slide, Dennis, the last slide there? We cannot simply say that you should not fear when you report a corruption or act of corruption, because the killing of the whistleblowers is happening. The killing of complainant in corruption cases is happening. It happened before. It happens now. So this recombination is really hard, but some countries were able to do it. Singapore, Denmark, they were able to do it. I think we can, if we are going to die, it will, the line in our lupang hinirang will be realized. Ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Right? Because when we report corruption, we are not just reporting corruption for our benefit, but also for the benefit of our country. Again, if you do this, if we do this and eventually we die because we did the right thing, I think we can face our Creator eye to eye and tell Him that, oh, God, I did my part. I ran the race. I completed the race. Diba? Next slide, please. Ensure citizens' right to information and prioritize easy, accessible, and proactive disclosure mechanism for public information. Sadly, the Office of the Ombudsman issued a memorandum months ago barring the access of the public to public officers' SALN, or Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth. I do not know the rationale why Ombudsman Martires issued this memorandum. When he was interviewed by ANC, he just told the reporter that he did this to avoid harassment to the concerned official by the public. The problem here is that he is only concerned with the harassment that this public official might face. But he wasn't able to see that the corruption that this government official might have done or have already committed. We cannot discover how much asset this government official has if we will not be able to see his SALN. And I think there was this lawyer, a public interest lawyer, I forgot his name. He asked for a copy of SALN of a certain government official, and of course he was denied by the Office of the Ombudsman because of this memorandum. And according to him, he was ordered by the Office of the Ombudsman to go instead to the Office of the President to acquire said SALN. And the Office of the President told him to go to the Ombudsman, since the Ombudsman has copies of all SALNs of government officials. In other words, na-dribble po itong lawyer na ito. He was not able to we have to see these things as it is, unless our gallant senators and congressmen will amend this provision of Omnibus Election Code. How can we ensure the freedom of corruption agencies, or integrity of corruption agencies? Well, that is up to the head of office of these agencies to really stand up for truth, really stand up for what is right, and not to be submissive to the will of one person who is in Malacanang. Hopefully, things will change. Next slide, please. Prevent bribery and favoritism in public service delivery, and strengthen merit-based recruitment process. Introduce competitive salaries, streamline administrative process, and enhance other preventive measures. I'd like to go here first, government post. More often than not, you have to have someone who will back your appointment or promotion. And that's been the kalakaran or the practice ever since. Ever since I work in the government, that's change, these things will change. Introduce competitive salaries. Well, we have already the amendments, several amendments of salary standardization law, wherein the government has already increased the salaries of public officers, and that's good. That's good. Streamline administrative process. I think late anti-red tape law, and it was amended, I think, in 2016 and 2017 with the creation of the ARTA, wherein this agency headed by Attorney Jeremiah Belica undersees the streamlining of administrative processes in government services. In fact, there's this stiff penalty if a government agency fails to issue the required document or permit or license to the applicant within specified period of time. The only exception is that if the applicant fails to comply with all the requirements being asked of him or her. And enhance other preventive measures. Again, we can still enact laws to strengthen anti-corruption drive of the government so that eventually our 115 rank will be improved later on. Next slide, please. Safeguard against kleptocracy, state capture, and big money in politics. Kleptocracy means a government who is wealth-induced and is being run by wealthy politicians who would acquire or would corrupt themselves while in service. That is kleptocracy. Improve transparency of political financing, strengthen comprehensive regulations to reduce conflict of interest, and build transparent beneficial ownership registers. Again, this is quite difficult, but if our lawmakers will be stiff in really, or would be serious in really eliminating the corruption in the government, this could be done. This really could be done. But right now, we are still in the lowest rank of the corruption perception index because of what is happening nowadays. No one dares to introduce amendments or enact new laws that would really eliminate corruption in the bureaucracy. Next slide, please. Recognize sexual extortion as a form of corruption and take measures to reduce the culture of shaming and victim blaming that discourages people from reporting abuses. Again, sexual extortion is happening even before. I have already given an example earlier when the appointing authority demands sexual favor from his would-be employee so that he or she would be hired or he or she would be promoted, and that is a corruption. Although it is not expressly mentioned in our Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, the complainant in this kind of situation can still file a case for example, rape or acts of lasciviousness if there is an overt act. But the demand per se, it could be. Of course, it will not just go under the RA 1319, but in some other penal laws. Again, culture shaming and victim blaming, this is really difficult. It's prevalent, especially with the advent of social media, wherein women will be blamed because of what happened to them. For example, they were raped or they were harassed. Some netizens would post on social media blaming the victim because of how she looks or how she dresses herself. That is really discouraging on the part of the victim. because of this victim blaming. Hopefully, our government, our senators and congressmen can enact laws that would really put penalties on this type of persons. Without these laws, victim can still run after these persons who say something bad against them. Perhaps if the comments are libelous, they could file a case for libel, or if it's done online, cyber libel. Cyber libel will do things like that. Next slide, please. Strengthen the independence of anti-corruption agencies and uphold previously established principles as required by the UN Convention Against Corruption. We are signatories to UN Convention Against Corruption. And as a testament to that, we are also strengthening our anti-corruption bodies. Our president, when he was elected, I think he immediately created the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission, where I belong, where I work right now. Of course, aside from my duty as a regular public prosecutor. And during the time that I was there and until now, we were still able to file cases against corrupt government officials in conjunction with in cooperation with the Office of the Ombudsman and the Department of Justice. I think right now we are doing this, but I think we should still double time in running after these corrupt public officials. And again, corruption is being done secretly. It is not made in the open. So every person who sees or who witnesses this type of behaviors should report the corruption, the incident, to either Office of the Ombudsman or DOJ or PACC, or to the police or NBI, wherever he or she may deem it convenient. Hopefully, these politicians or the persons involved in corruption will not go after this whistleblower. If they did, anything can happen against the whistleblower. If not, well, that's good, because we will be able to prosecute them to the full extent of the law. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, for further questions, you may contact me at this email address, snbelen@up.edu.ph, and at my mobile number. Again, I would like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, the People's Volunteer Against Illegal Drugs, for inviting me, especially to Mark Cadile for inviting me to speak to you tonight. Salamat po sa inyong lahat for listening.
Okay, that was very informative discussion from Atty Sesinio Belen Jr. Very well explained, Attorney. Okay, yun po yung speakers natin for our program Drug Free Philippines Movement, and we welcome any questions, everybody from the audience or from the participants, anyone. You can share your thoughts about our discussion. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Mark.
Okay.
Good evening. Hello, good evening, Mark.
Good evening. Go ahead. JP.
Pwede ba magsalita?
Sige, go ahead.
Tawag ito. Sana po kung meron man tayong mga members dito sa PVAID, simulan na nila magkumpisal kung ano mang meron silang tinatago, na sumali sila dito at dito pa sila magkalat ng mga kalat nila dati doon sa labas. Lalo na ito ngayon. Itong NGO natin, itong PVAID natin, ay di ba non-partisan to. Non-partisan sa mga kandidato. Huwag tayong mag-engage at huwag tayong magpagamit sa ibang mga kandidato para i-endorse nila at bibigyan tayo ng funding at hindi alam ng mga kasama natin. Yung nasa itaas lang yung nakakatanggap. At hindi naman yan ang adhikain natin. Kaya tayo pumasok dito sa PVAID na to, Volunteers Against Illegal Drugs. Dahil dyan, gusto natin makatulong dun sa mga biktima ng droga. at ma-reduce natin yung droga dito sa Pilipinas. Hindi tayo pumasok dito at hindi tayo nag-volunteer dito para magpagamit sa politiko. Sana naman kasi may napuna na ako eh. Ako nananahimik lang ako, tinitingnan ko lang kung ano yung takbo natin. Pero sana naman maging totoo tayo dito sa organisasyon na to. Kasi ako totoo ako, tutulong ako. Kahit may negosyo ko, iniiwanan ko. Kahit mahirap ako dito, kahit isang tuka lang, pero ginagawa ko kung ano yung dapat gawin para lang sa PBAID. Sana man lang, Mark, ay marinig at maipasa ito at marinig to sa lahat, lalo na sa mga opisyal natin. At kung mayroon mang mga nakaupo dyan sa opisyal natin dito ngayon sa PBAID, nasa itaas natin, kung mayroon man kayong involvement dyan at mayroon man kayong plano na mag-corrupt dito, sabihin nyo lang, willing naman kaming umalis eh. At willing din kaming babalik. Pag talagang totoo na para lang sa anti-drugs lang ginagawa natin. Maraming salamat, Mark.
Okay, salamat JP sa inyong opinion. Okay. Anyone? Attorney Richard Abangan, any thoughts of the topic?
Hello? Magdong ko, Mark.
Loud and clear.
Okay
Go
lang.
ahead.
Loud and clear. Thank you pala, Fiscal, no, sa information regarding corruption. At totoo po yun na very prevalent po yung corruption dito sa Pilipinas. At I believe na wala dito na hindi alam ng balita tungkol sa corruption. At I believe na lahat naman tayo, no, na alam natin na mahirap na i-prevent yung corruption, and I agree with Fiscal, no, na tayo mga ordinaryong Pilipino lang talaga ang makaka-prevent ng corruption. Actually, meron sana akong tanong kay Fiscal, pero I think nandito pa ba siya?
I'm here, attorney. Yes.
Okay.
I'm hearing you.
Okay, thank you, Fiscal. Actually, Fiscal, meron akong 3 cases ngayon, no, regarding corrupt officials. Regarding yung mga corruptions na ginagawa ng mga public officers. Ang dalawa lang nito, ordinary pleadings lang ang na-file ko. Pero yung isa, delikado ito kasi malapit kasi dito eh. So ang ginawa ko, anonymous letter lang doon sa ombudsman. Ang question ko lang po, Fiscal, mai-entertain pa ba ng ombudsman ngayon mga tinatawag natin anonymous letters?
Thank you for your question, Attorney Richard. Yes, in-entertain ng Office of the Ombudsman yung mga anonymous letter. In fact, there is this jurisprudence and even internal office order wherein the Office of the Ombudsman would entertain even anonymous letter. And we understand that as former employee of the Office of the Ombudsman because of the fear of the complainants of reprisals from the concerned public officer. So, ano po yun? Maaaktuhan yun. Anong office po ba yan? Office of the Ombudsman Visayas, Luzon, o sa Mindanao?
Dito po sa Visayas po.
Okay.
Pero ang evidence po ba is kailangan po ba kasi ang nahirapan kasi ako nito kasi yung evidence ko hindi po sworn statement, no. Usually kasi may sworn statement kasi ng witnesses, like yung dalawa kong cases, pero ito wala. Puro lang pictures at saka documentary evidence na photocopy pa po. So
Yeah. Okay. In cases like that, Attorney Richard, the Office of the Ombudsman will not automatically docket your case as a regular preliminary investigation. What the Office of the Ombudsman will do is to conduct a fact-finding investigation. They would ascertain whether there is veracity in your letter, in your report. After they have found out that there is truth regarding your letter or your anonymous letter, they would now call the concerned public official to answer to this anonymous letter. And then after that, they would conduct investigation. The Office of the Ombudsman would be the complaining party if in case that during the fact-finding, they would find out that there is indeed corruption that existed. A lawyer from the Office of the Ombudsman would act as the complainant based on the facts that they gathered during the fact-finding. And of course, they would attach the letter complaint or anonymous letter that a party has sent to the office as the basis for their fact-finding.
Okay, salamat po talaga, Fiscal.
Welcome, Attorney.
So, meron pa palang chance yun.
Yes, yes.
kasi kakasubmit ko lang, it's really my first time to submit an anonymous letter. And another pala, okay lang ba yung yung it doesn't matter kung anong language ilagay sa anonymous letter, no? Kasi
Yes,
ang appeal ko kasi sa anonymous letter, parang hindi abogado. Para hindi halata na ako talaga nag-file.
Yes, yes.
Okay po.
Okay lang
Thank
yun,
you po.
Attorney. Kahit
Okay.
ano pa yan, Filipino, English, Bisayan, basta naintindihan, they would
Okay
act.
po.
They would act.
Okay, thank you po.
Okay. Welcome, Attorney.
Okay, Sir Bangbang from Tanhay City, you are acknowledged.
Good evening. Good evening po. Question po kay Fiscal. Fiscal, gaano po ba katagal yung duration ng mga draft cases gaya ng palang malversation of funds, parang ganun, na isinampa sa ombudsman? Usually.
Well, kung ang tanong niya lang po is investigation sa Office of the Ombudsman, may mga tumatagal po kasi we have to understand na marami hong kasong sinasampa sa Office of the Ombudsman. Although hindi kasi alam ng mamamayan natin na yung DOJ po pwede rin mag-investigate ng kaso ng graft and corruption. Yung PACC po pwede rin mag-investigate ng kaso ng graft and corruption. Meron tayong 3 ahensya na pwedeng mag-conduct ng investigation patungkol sa mga corruption po. Kaya lang iba kasi naiisip na sa ombudsman lang yung may jurisdiction kaya natatambakan po yung kaso. Kaya minsan tumatagal po ng taon. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years bago magkaroon ng resolution yung Office of the Ombudsman. Pwedeng, dalawa lang po yan eh. Pwedeng sampahan ng kaso yung public official concern, like yung concern niyo pong kanina, malversation. Pwede rin naman ma-dismiss yung kaso. Kung ma-dismiss man po, definitely it's up to you kung mag-file kayo ng MR or mag-a-appeal kayo. Kung masampa naman po yung kaso sa korte, then yung complainant po should really see to it that he or she will attend the court proceedings because definitely the complainant will be one of those witnesses that the government will utilize in the prosecution of these kinds of cases.
Fiscal, follow-up question po. Kadalasan, ano po ang mga penalties or mga parusa kapag mapatunayang guilty yung isang opisyal na gumawa ng isang corrupt na?
Depende po yan, Sir Baltasar, sa nature ng kaso. Kung halimbawa, plunder po yung sinampang kaso at napatunayang nagkasala siya, life imprisonment po yan, yung plunder. Yung malversation po, depende rin sa amount ng involved.
Specific example po, Fiscal, yung fund ng yung sa COVID, yung parang sustento na ibinibigay sa tao, yung kasama sa Bayanihan Act, yun mismo na kaso. So usually pag ma-proven guilty, ganon din po ba ang penalties?
Well, sa mga ganyang kaso po, criminal cases po yan. So kapag kasong criminal ho, ang penalty dyan ay pagkakakulong. At syempre, meron ding restoration ng ninakaw, which is yung civil aspect ng kaso. Usually ho, kapag nahatulan yung isang tao na guilty sa kasong kriminal, bukod sa ikukulong siya, pagbabayarin din siya ng gobyerno doon sa amount ng ninakaw niya, plus interest, habang hindi niya nababayaran to, may interest po yan na tumatakbo. Paano natin ma-recover yung monetary award? Kung may property si akusado, pwedeng i-elite ng gobyerno para mabayaran yung multa o yung civil liability ng akusado. Regarding po sa penalty na tinatanong nyo, hindi po natin malalaman kasi po wala po kayong amount na sinabi. Kung million po yung amount na ninakaw, definitely medyo mataas yung penalty.
Siguro mga 50 million yata involved doon.
Ilan po?
50 million.
Well, depende ho sa overt acts, meaning depende kung paano kinumit yung crime. Kasi 50 million, ano na yan? Pwede nang gawing plunder kasi yun yung yung minimum 50 million or higher. pwede rin namang malversation lang, pwedeng violation ng RA 3019 or yung Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Marami yung pwedeng maging kaso basta involving
Kaya pala po.
Mm.
Madami ang involved at madami ang i-final. Nabasa ko lang to po na sa i-final lang sa ADG sa mga may official ng isang lugar. Sige, thank you po. Thank you po. Salamat
Welcome po.
Salamat
Salamat po sa pagtatanong, Sir Baltasar. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Sige, farewell lang. Okay na, okay na.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Ako na. Hello.
Go ahead. You're loud and clear, Sir Dennis.
Okay, sige. Parang nagpipigback kasi. So yung tanong ko is,
Paki-off yung isang kuan mo. Cellphone.
okay.
Tika, saglit lang. Kuan ka, naka-mute ka, Sir Dennis. Tika, saglit lang ha. Naka-mute ka. Ikaw kung
Yun. Okay, sige. So, yung tanong ko, okay na ba yun? Naririnig niyo ako? Hello, naririnig niyo ba ako?
okay lang, go ahead. Sir Dennis, go ahead.
Okay,
You're
sige.
loud and clear.
Sige. Okay, so yung tanong ko is yung pertaining doon sa presentation na sextortion saka sexual harassment. No? Kasi meron na rin tayo doon sa, I think, di ko alam, matagal ko na nabasa yun, di ko alam kung sa revised penal code yun siya. No? Meron tayong yung qualified seduction, hindi pa ba kasama yan doon?
Pwede po, I suppose sa akin po yung tanong, no? Sir Dennis.
Yes, po.
Okay. Yung qualified seduction po, definitely kinocommit yan ng mga taong kurap yung pag-iisip. Gaya sinabi ko kanina po, depende ho sa factual antecedents yung kaso na pwedeng isampa. Maaring pumasok siya sa seduction of minor, pwedeng acts of lasciviousness, pwedeng rape, depende po sa factual antecedent ng kaso. So we have to be very clear kung ano ho ba yung circumstansya bago ho natin masabi kung anong kaso ang dapat nating isampa.
Okay. Yung next na tanong ko is, ito yung mga real life observation ko. Kasi marami naman na mga kasong na isasampa sa ombudsman, no? Especially dito sa mga politiko natin, no? Ombudsman, politiko kaagad yan, no? Yung mga, or kaya mga government officials. Now the question is, bakit no? Ang tagal ng mga proseso o kaya yung paglilitis, napakatagal lumabas yung resulta at usually lalabas lang siya kapag yung kandidato ay hindi kakampi ng gobyerno, ng mga nasa poder, no? Yan ang obserbasyon ko, na kapag hindi na sila kakampi, lumalabas na yung mga resulta kaagad, ang bilis. Pero pag kakampi pa sila, walang resulta, matagal. Yun ang observation ko po.
Paano ko ba sasagutin to? Kasi po, may mga situation tayo na marami yung docket ng korte, meaning marami silang pending cases kaya medyo tumatagal yung pagdinig. We have to understand po, Sir Dennis, na kada kaso po na sinasampa sa korte, in your case, yung binigay niyo example sa Sandigan Bayan, the courts are treating each case as unique and as important as the other cases. Napaka-importante ho ng bawat kaso kaya dapat bigyan nila ng tamang pansin at panahon. Kung tumatagal man po, dahil po yan sa dami ng kaso na nakasampa sa kanila, kaya napakahirap desisyonan kaagad. Meron din pong iba pang circumstansya katulad ng postponement ng prosecution postponement ng defense, nagkasakit si fiscal, nagkasakit si defense lawyer, hindi makakarating si akusado, things like that po, na nare-reset po yung kaso. Yun po is beyond the control na ng korte. Kaya lang siyempre, kailangan nilang i-reset kasi hindi naman po pwedeng matuloy yung kaso kung wala yung abogado ng akusado. Hindi rin naman pa pwedeng matuloy yung kaso kung wala si fiscal na magpo-prosecute kay akusado. Yun ho yung mga reasons kung bakit tumatagal. Bukod pa doon sa dami ng kaso na nakasampa sa korte. Ngayon yung observation niyo po na bakit kapag kakampi is tumatagal yung kaso, pag hindi nakakampi, lumalabas agad yung resolution. Yan po yung hindi ko masasagot kasi unang-una hindi ako aware sa mga ganong situation kasi nung nasa ombudsman po ako, nung nag-a-appear ako sa Sandigang Bayan, nakikita ko naman yung reason kung bakit tumatagal yung kaso, kung bakit mabilis yung kaso. Minsan kung bakit mabilis kasi konti lang naman yung testigo ng prosecution tsaka ng defense. Tumatagal kasi masyadong komplikado yung issues, masyadong maraming testigong pinaresenta yung prosecution, masyadong maraming testigong pinaresenta si defense, kaya ho tumatagal. Minsan po maraming parties din yung involved, kaya tumatagal din. Siyempre, every person has to be heard sa korte. Kung 10 akusado po yan, napakatagal ho i-hear yan kasi lahat ng akusado dapat magpresenta rin ng testigo nila, ng ebidensya nila, so kung man, ganoon din yung prosecution. Dapat talagang isa-isa nila mapoprosecute yung mga akusado na yun. Kaya ho, tumatagal. Kaya yung iba naman mabilis, gaya na sinabi ko, kasi kunti lang ho yung involved. Minsan isa lang, isang akusado lang. Kunti lang yung tigong involved. Kaya ho, ganun.
Thank you po. Thank you.
Thank you po sa tanong niyo.
Meron din akong isang tanong din about dito sa money laundering ba? Kasi di ba yung mga money laundering papasok at palabas yan ng ng bansa?
Tama po, tama po.
Ito medyo technical lang. Pag may mga investors ba na galing sa labas, kailangan ba talagang dumaan yan sa Department of Finance o hindi? Pwede naman direkta na i-deposito sa bangko, bank to bank, ganyan. Pwede na ba yan o hindi?
Depende ho sa amount kasi may naging cliente ako before na yung investor niya is from Canada, nag-send ng pera. 1 million lang yun kasi 2 billion supposedly yung investment. Pero dahil nga sa anti-money laundering, hinati niya 1 million and then yung 1 million susunod na linggo. Kaya lang, nung unang padala pala ng 1 million is ang dami nang hiningi ng bangko. Ito hindi na ho dumaan ng Department of Finance. Sa bangko na ho ito diretso. Nahirapan lang i-justify pinahirapan lang ng bangko yung kumpanya na ma-release yung pera. Siyempre, we cannot blame the bank kasi nagpo-comply lang sila sa directive ng AMLA. So, ang hinanapan sila ng AOI, yung Articles of Incorporation, yung business permit, yung sets of board of directors nila, and yung proof na talagang investor yung nagpadala ng pera. Tsaka yung paggagamitan is legitimate yung business na paggagamitan ng investment. So we have to, yung client ko dati, we have to show contracts that involves money, projects, which this money will be used to. Kaya yun po. Na-release naman, kaya lang syempre matagal, na-delay yung projects, things like that. Pero kung malaki ho yan, talagang mahirap ho yan kasi i-scrutinize ho ng AMLA yan, definitely.
Okay. Yung isang tanong ko naman, yung palabas na naman is, di ba nagkaroon ng issue noon yung mga offshore account ng mga malalaki nating politiko, especially yung mga senadors, congressman, mga nasa taas, no? Yung sa mga offshore accounts nila, like they are depositing their money doon sa mga countries na mga parang walang pakialam doon sa banking secrecy, no? Like Costa Rica, mga ganyan, and then Palau, ganyan, or Fiji Islands, ganyan, hindi ba ito nakikita ng gobyerno kung paano ito ordain ng Central Bank or Department of Finance kung paano ito lumalabas? Kasi nadidiscover lang dahil nagkaroon ng issue sa politika. Pero before that, ngayon wala namang pero I'm sure na tuloy-tuloy pa rin ito siya. Kasi malaking bawas ito sa ekonomiya natin, I'm sure.
Well,
Sige po.
salamat po sa tanong niyo, Sir Dennis. The problem with that is hindi nire-report ng bank yung ganong klaseng deposit from the Philippines to other offshore accounts. Unang-una, yun yung problema, hindi na i-report agad. Kaya nakakalusot. Pangalawa, yung politicians na sinasabi niyo, definitely they use their money influence, di ba? Yung power nila, yung influence nila, yung pera nila, ginamit nila para mapalusot itong deposit nito sa kanilang offshore accounts. Ang problema rin sa mga sinabi mong bansa na seemingly walang pakialam is hindi sila signatory sa treaty regarding sa money laundering. Wala tayong diplomatic ties. Yung iba, yun nga, wala tayong treaty na pinirmahan with them para magkaroon tayo ng agreement wherein we can extradite yung mga politicians na, let's say, tumakas, or that yung pera na yun na dineposit sa offshore sa bansa nila, pwede nating i-seize or ibalik ng bangko nila pabalik sa Philippines. Wala ho tayong ganung agreement sa mga ibang bansa, kaya ho napakahirap. Kaya sila nakakalusot. And then kung malaman man ng huli, dahil may nag-imbestiga, definitely yung kaaway ni politiko na to, meron din siyang power and influence, and meron din siyang pera, definitely may kausap siya sa loob ng bangko para i-divulge yung bank transaction nitong politiko na ito na may offshore accounts. So ganun po yung laruan dyan. Kaya ho, minsan, huli na nadidiscover.
Okay, thank you po. Another one, pasensya na marami akong tanong. Meron pa din na yung ano ba, kasi yung corruption sa gobyerno natin, kahit sa anong organisasyon, talagang talamak na siya ba na matagal na, talagang matagal na, no? Pero especially sa government natin, ano? Lahat naman ng mga tao, ng mga citizens, okay, mga constituents natin, lahat gusto namang umasinso yung bansa natin, no? Lahat-lahat. Kaya lang, parang hinihila tayo pababa dahil sa corruption. Okay. So, ang tanong ko dito is, bakit marami naman tayong mga matatalinong mga senador, mga congressman, bakit hindi pa rin nag-i-improve ang system sa Commission on Audits, ganyan, DBM, saka itong ombudsman para matigil ito. Kasi system lang kasi ito, di ba? No? So, I'm not in the government. No? Wala ako. This is only my observation. Kasi di ba, this is only a process na dapat na i-check, i-improve, continuous improvement para masolve ang problemang ito. Okay, sa palagay mo, as a member ng PACC, what do you think yung hindrance, no, yung bakit hindi ito nagagawan ng paraan para ma-improve, maayos yung sistemang ito na matigil yung end in mind natin is and yung corruption. No? Bakit ganon? Okay po.
Okay, thank you po, Sir Dennis, sa tanong niyo. Sa tingin ko lang, this is just my opinion, kahit na magagaling yung ating mga senador at congressman, yung iba nag-aral sa abroad, yung iba mga cum laude sa mga kilalang eskwelahan, nangungurak pa rin sila is yung power, yung money is addictive. Nagkakaroon sila ng greed. Diba? They want more. Kahit na meron na sila, komportable na sila sa buhay, they want more. Lalo na kung may opportunity ka, kasi nga meron kang power and influence, they would use that to their advantage. Yun po yung nagiging problema ng ating gobyerno ngayon. Sa COA naman po, I dealt with COAs many times before when I was still a prosecutor with the Ombudsman, kasi nga po, usually they are one of our witnesses, yung mga audit na yan. Usually dyan na-discover yung corruption. But may kulang, saan napunta itong pera na ito? Things like that. And COA discovers that and they would issue an audit observation memorandum sa isang tao, sa isang politiko, kung hindi man politiko, yung isang opisyal ng gobyerno na may hawak ng pera. Ini-issue nila yun para pag-explainin bakit ganito yung expenditure mo, dinidisallow namin to. Yun ho yung papel ng COA. Sa tingin ko naman ho, yung COA is independent. Ang problema lang po is mga officials natin sa gobyerno, bukod sa hindi na sila nakontento kung anong meron sila, is kapag may opportunity mangurap, talagang gagawin po nila yun. Masasabi kong nasa tao na yan eh. Kapag corrupt po yung mind mo, corrupt yung puso mo, lahat po ng action mo is corrupt din talaga. Kaya maganda man yung ating layunin bilang mamamayan, kapag yung ating mga nasa taas, yung ating mga leader corrupt, napakahirap po ibangon ng ating bansa sa korupsyon na ating naranasan hanggang ngayon. Kaya nga ho, sa susunod na election, I'm not promoting anyone or I'm not telling you to vote for a specific candidate. Talaga kung dapat i-scrutinize natin kung ano bang nagawa nitong mga taong to kung they are running for re-election. Tingnan natin ano bang nagawa nitong mga politiko na to. Maganda ba o napakasama ng track record? Yung mga bago naman ho, scrutinize nyo. Hindi naman porket hindi sila sikat or hindi sila kilala, hindi na sila qualified. Let's see, let's check kung ano ba pwede natin gawin sa Senado, sa Kongreso, o sa pagiging presidente o vice-presidente. Pero yun nga ho, yung tanong nyo, napakahirap po talaga. Kaya nga ho, nagbigay ako ng recommendations ko kanina. Medyo, sa system natin ngayon, medyo suntok sa buwan. Kasi ho, may mga kailangan law na i-enact, may mga kailangan i-amend. Pero hindi nangyayari kasi maapektuhan yung hanap buhay ng mga politiko natin, di ba? Ayaw nila yun. For example, yung anti-dynasty law, hindi mapasa-pasa yung anti-dynasty law. Sa constitution natin, sinasabi yun expressly na bawal yung political dynasty or family nepotism. Of course, by dapat by enactment of law. Wala akong mag-i-enact kasi maapektuhan sila eh. Ayaw nila nun. Wala tayong magagawa, 'di ba? Kaya nasa leader din natin talaga yung yung susi. Hindi lang sa atin. We should work hand in hand. Willing man tayo kapag yung mga nasa taas hindi. Sad to say, nga na lang tayo.
Yeah. So thank you po. No, ito na rin yung feedback ko din. Actually is talamak talaga yung corruption at minsan nakaka-observe ako. Kaya sabi nga parang mahirap din na mag-take part tayo doon sa investigasyon kasi nadidisturbo din yung buhay natin, Yung sa amin, halimbawa kami nakakakita kami nakaka-witness kami ng mga corruption na ganyan. Okay, no? So gaya ng mga time nung kasagsagan ng mga project ng yung Gloria time na yon, yung sa mga farmers, yung flatbed na dryer, yung mechanical dryer, talagang overpricing yun, matindi, no? Meron din yung mga sa mga NGO na binibigay yung tawag dito, yung para sa tanim, yung may plastic, yung cover, yung greenhouse, yan, overpricing din yan. Pero totoo, mura lang pala yan siya, tapos milyon-milyon ang bawat set dito, So, and then yung iba, mga kalsada, picture lang yung ginagawa, picture lang yung sa mga kurbada, pero hindi pala nagagawa yung yung portion lang yung nagawa, pero was reported as complete. Ganon, no? Ngayon, nasa maintenance na sila ngayon para matapos, pero it was reported before as complete. No? So, matindi yung corruption. Dito naman, yung observation ko din yung kalsada na ang tagal-tagal nang ni-repair. Since na dumating ako dito sa Iloilo, 1988, hanggang ngayon, ni-repair pa rin siya. No? Every year ni-repair. Sabi ko, bakit ito? Wala bang magandang engineer dito sa atin? Bakit every year hindi nasusolve yung problema na yan sa kalsada na yan? No? So, napakatagal. No? More than 30 years, hindi nasusolve. So, ibig sabihin, yun ang bumubuhay sa mga congressman dito, congressman saka sa mga mayor ng mga bayan na yan, na walang katapusang repair, yung drainage, walang katapusang construction sa drainage, So yun ang mga observation ko ng mga corruption, kahit sa mga agency na LTO na ganyan, LTO, LTFRB, kahit sa munisipyo, pero kaya lang ako naman sinisikap ko na hindi makipag-involve o kahit paano, sinisikap na hindi gagawa ng, mag-support sa ganung activity, Pero kung minsan talagang medyo may mga mahirap din na part na talagang hindi maipasok, na na talagang kailangan mag-participate ka din minsan, para lang magawa yung gusto mo kasi talagang iba matindi talaga ang gagaling nila. So, magsishare din ako ng konti about sa corruption. No? Ito na pa na natutunan ko din ito before. Sabi daw yung corruption is kasi kung anong, bakit mayroong corruption? Ganyan. So, sabi nga, ano ba ang meaning ng yung mga word na corruption is from core and raption is from rapture. Ganyan, ano? So, ano yung core? C-O-R means like center. Sintro. So, sa ating katawan, ano yung pinaka-sintro sa ating katawan? Sabi nga, it is the heart. Okay? Rapture. Raption is from rapture, broken, no? Broken. So, meaning to say, sabi nga, kapag ang isang country o isang organization o isang bayan o kaya isang tao ay mayroong corruption, no? Broken-hearted yan siya. Kasi nga yung center niya is broken, no? Rapture, broken, tapos center ng heart niya is broken. So, broken-hearted daw yan siya, no? Ibig sabihin ay, yan, broken-hearted. So, kaya nag-i-engage siya sa corruption. So, our country, if known to be corrupt, then our country is a country of broken-hearted. Yan. Okay. Thank you po.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone would like to share their thoughts, or shall we end? Huh? Isa? June Espirito, Emilio Espirito, meron ka bang gustong sabihin? Meron ka bang gustong i-share? Kuya June from Imus, Cavite.
Tungkol po ito.
Sana ba? Oh. May istorya na to, no? Go ahead.
Pumasok sa akin. Mayroon pong nakikita pong extortion sa isang politiko na involved din ito sa acts of lasciviousness at sa which is a form of corruption dahil itong employee niya na babae, yung subordinate niya ay meron silang relasyon. Totoo po itong story. I will not mention to anyone. Nangyari po na yung husband niya hindi nagko-complain dahil siguro needy or kailangan din ang financial. So, walang complaint. Nasa gobyerno siya. Sino ba pong pwedeng mag-file ng complaint for that kung sakali man fiscal?
Sir, sorry kasi may mga portions
Narinig ko ba?
putol-putol po kayo, sir. Hindi ko na kuha lahat.
Oo nga po. Sa kwan po ito, sa Wi-Fi po ito, sa signal. Signal
Pwede bang
po.
pakiulit lang yung huli?
Yung huli po, yung subordinate po niya, yung husband, kasi babae yon, yung niya, boss niya, may position sa local executive na mayroon silang relasyon. Tapos yung husband hindi nagko-complain dahil siguro ang kwan lang niya po ay edited or yung nakita sa cellphone, sa video, photographic photographic kwan evidence ay sabi nila edited lang daw. Nag-accept lang niya yon. Sino pong magpa-file ng complaint kung walang magpa-file? Ano pong mangyayari doon? Paano matanggal yung nasa poder na kwan?
Yung mga kasong ganyan, private crimes po kasi yan like adultery o acts of lasciviousness, those are private crimes. Kung walang complainant, kung ayaw ho mag-file ng kaso ni husband dahil gaya ng sinabi nyo, he is in need, hindi niya po pwedeng sampahan yung boss dahil baka mawalan ng trabaho si wife niya. Pwede naman yung nakakaalam sa opisina ang mag-file ng kaso, but not for acts of lasciviousness. Kasi I'm sure hindi naman niya nakita kung paano ginagawa ng dalawa yung lascivious act. Hindi nila nakikita sa motel o sa hotel, kung saan man, sa bahay, yung sexual act, di ba? So napakahirap po.
Nakikita po sa kasi naging scandal na po yun eh. Nakita po sa may photographic evidence po talaga. Paano po yun? Edited lang daw yun sa OMBUDSMAN, yung nakita sa video, edited lang daw po yun.
It's a matter of defense kung edited man, pero gaya na sinabi ko,
Yes, sir.
kung ayaw mag-file ng asawa ng babae ng adultery against the wife and the official, anyone from the office or from the community may file a case against that politician and the wife for gross immorality, administrative case para matanggal sa trabaho. Kasi bawal ang gross immorality o ang immoralidad sa ngayon ng gobyerno. May penalty po dyan under our civil service law. Kung may evidence po kayo like sex video or anyone who knows, testimonial evidence which is also an evidence, papasok po 'yun sa kasong gross immorality. Pwede hong matanggal sa trabaho itong official na to, pati yung babae. Kasi it takes two to tango, hindi po pwedeng sila laki lang yung maalis. Dalawa ho sila eh. Lalo na itong babae may asawa ho. So, gross immorality ho ito.
Sige. Salamat po, Fiscal.
Welcome po.
Meron ako pahabol na question, Sinciano, pero kailangan talaga. Yung kanina, yung sa presentation na recommendation na i-encourage yung mga ordinary people, the majority, na mag-participate doon sa reporting, no? With giving the assurance na doon sa fear of retaliation ba? Doon. Hindi ba pwede yung sinabi ni Attorney Abangan na mag-send ng anonymous letter and then let's say si Commission on Audit nagpa-follow ng ganitong yung kaso, nag-audit siya and then found out na merong evidence of corruption. Kailangan pa ba mag-participate yung tao? O pwede naman na yung yung COA na yung mag-file ng complaint or case against the hearing public officials.
Yung mga ganong kaso, hindi na ho kailangang mag-participate yung nag-send ng anonymous letter. Kasi gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, kapag yung Office of the Ombudsman nakatanggap po ng anonymous letter, syempre wala akong complainant doon, they would conduct fact-finding investigation. So, on its own, magpapadala sila ng tao sa field para imbestigahan yung concerned public official na in-report via anonymous letter. Ngayon kung sakaling mapatunayan ng ombudsman na totoo yung sinasabi ng nagsulat na yon na hindi nagpakilala, doon magpa-file si ombudsman through one of its investigators na mag-execute ng complaint affidavit. So tatayong complainant po si ombudsman dito through its employee o one of its lawyers na mag-submit ng complaint affidavit. From then on, magkakaroon na ng regular preliminary investigation wherein i-invite si respondent or si politikong concerned o si public official na concerned na magsumite ng kanyang kontrasalaysay para pasinungalingan yung akusasyon laban sa kanya ng ombudsman, which is yung personnel ng ombudsman yung nag-file. So ganun ho yung proseso. Ayun, hindi na ho magkakaroon ng participation pa yung nag-sumite ng anonymous letter. After all, hindi naman siya kilala kasi nga anonymous letter, definitely wala siyang pangalan doon at address. So, yun po.
Okay. Na-mention mo na yung magpa-file ng case or complaint yung investigator. Hindi kaya yung investigator is dahil siyempre, halimbawa, big fish itong kakaharapin niya. Hindi kaya na gagawin niya lang, no? There's a tendency na ang gagawin niya is hindi niya ipoprove na mayroong katiwalian itong na-report. No? Na-report na opisyal. Kasi nga, matitreaten din siya. Hindi ba pwede na yung magpapile ng case is the institution mismo, yung ombudsman mismo, na walang individual na involved? Kasi pag individual talagang posible, malaki ang chance na hindi niya ilalaban ito. Nakakatakot. Gaya yung mga ginagawa ng mga pulis, nakakatakot. No? I mean, yung sa mga halimbawa, drug syndicate, magkaroon sila ng yung bypass na ganyan o kaya mag-rape, tapos individual yung magpapile. Sa side ng pulis, nakakatakot yun. No? Ganon din dito sa ombudsman, nakakatakot yun. Especially kung malaking tao yung babanggain niya. Tapos siya ay ordinary citizen lang na hindi niya kayang protektahan yung sarili niya sa pamilya niya. So ngayon, ang gagawin niya, there's a possibility na talagang siya, na hindi niya ibibigyan ng yung talagang deeper na investigation. Sige po.
Yung unang sagot ko sa tanong nyo is yung kung hindi ba dapat si ombudsman na mismo talaga yung mag-file, hindi yung tao niya. Well, yung opisina po ng ombudsman ay isang institusyon, hindi po siya tao. Kaya definitely, it can only act through its personnel, di ba? Kaya yung isa sa mga tao niya ang nagsasampa ng kaso, ganun ho talaga. Yung sagot ko naman sa pangalawang tanong is baka hindi niya pag-igihan yung investigasyon dahil baka natatakot siya. Gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, pwede hong mangyari yun. Lalo na kung talagang may imminent threat or may death threat na mismo, talagang kahit sino naman nakakatakot, lalo na kung wala ka namang means to defend yourself, di ba? Wala ka namang influence, wala ka namang power, talagang nakakatakot. In that case, yung mga taong nagsasampa ng kaso, pwede yung dumiretso sa witness protection program para maprotektahan yung sarili nila hanggang sa matapos yung kaso. During the time na ongoing yung case, nasa pangangalaga ka ng witness protection program. So napaka-safe po kayo doon. O yung complainant man, kung sino man po yun. So yun po. Yun lang ho yung nakikita ko na na solusyon para saligin o sanggain yung threat or yung death threats na po pwedeng or danger na po pwedeng mangyari sa complainant.
Yeah. So ngayon, as I see it, na talagang hindi siya magiging effective, no? Yung desired result natin dito is talagang at stake, no? Parang hindi natin ma-assure na maibigay yung justice sa ganitong sistema. So I think our lawmakers will take a look at this, no? Tama ba, Richard Abanggan, attorney?
Thank you, Sir Dennis, sa tanong.
Okay, my question dito si Ms. Benos. Attorney, ang mga whistleblowers po, ano po ang maging program at protection nila from the government natin? Kasi sa UN, meron silang program for them.
I suppose sa akin yun, or kay Attorney Richard?
Yes, Attorney. Sa inyo, Attorney.
Okay, sige. Well, gaya ho na sinabi ko, meron ho tayong witness protection program kung saan yung mga whistleblowers po ay sumasailalim sa pangangalaga ng programang ito. Ito ay under ng DOJ, Department of Justice, sa amin pong tanggapan. Habang yung kaso po ay hindi pa natatapos, nasa pangangalaga po ng programa yung complainant. Ginagawa namin to para ho, syempre, hindi naman ma-ambush o ma-assassinate yung complainant, di ba? Kasi pag nawala si complainant, namatay siya, wala kami testigo. Di ba? In fact, hindi lang ho siya. Pwede yung family niya makasama niya kapag may imminent threat na sa family niya. So pati yung family niya kasama sa program namin. Nililipat namin siya sa ibang lugar. Nililipat namin siya sa ibang lugar. Doon muna siya titira para hindi siya, siyempre, yung hindi dapat alam ng kalaban o nung nireport niyang tao. Hanggang sa matapos na yung kaso. Pag natapos na yung kaso, yun, pwede na hong matapos yung witness protection sa kanya. Yun po, yung mga ginagawa ng, at least ng opisina namin sa DOJ. Yung panahon po na nasa ombudsman ako, ganun din ho, nire-refer ng ombudsman yung mga ganyang kaso sa DOJ na sumailalim sa witness protection program. Hindi ko lang ho ngayon, hindi ho ako aware kung may sariling witness protection program na yung OMB or yung ombudsman.
Okay. Siguro yun na yung mga...
Meron pang question si Attorney Abanggat.
Sige, go ahead, Attorney.
Wala. Nag-share lang ako na sa witness protection program pala ay mayroong financial assistance Meron akong client na threat yung life niya. So nasa witness protection program siya ngayon. Nilipat siya pati yung pamilya niya, tapos meron pa silang financial assistance. So no need na sila mag-work. Yun lang po.
Yan. Thank you, attorney. Tama yan, tama yan.
Okay, guys. I think we are already done in our interaction with our guest, with Atty Sesinio Belen Jr. It seems that we really learned a lot from him on how we educate ourselves to say no to corruption. Now, let us have a short recap on the things that we have learned in tonight's discussion. We are celebrating the International Anti-Corruption Day from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Let me remind everyone that the essence of how to stop corruption is your right, your rule, say no to corruption. Okay, guys. And I would like to ask an apology to everyone that we don't have the United Nations and their own celebration. Okay, guys. There's an issue, okay, regarding a certain group, okay, from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Philippines, okay? Kasi meron ang United Nations kasi meron sila main office dun sa New York, then sa Vienna, then dito rin sa Philippines, okay? Ako, since meron akong kilala na isang ambassador from UN dun nakabase sa New York, so nagkwentuhan kami just yung parang average na, just like an average people na magkwentuhan, okay? So nabanggit nila yung meron silang upcoming na mga programs, okay? Isa dito yung International Anti-Corruption Day. So since yung UNODC kasi sa Vienna, sila kasi yung forefront nito, yung pinaka nangunguna sa program na to, yung Anti-Corruption Day. Since sila naman ang nangunguna, so kaya padala ako ng letter for a request for a resource speaker. Since last time, yung in-invite ko yung isang kaibigan ko na babae na isang ambassador from New York, nag-attend sila sa seminar dito sa PVAID or People's Volunteer Against Illegal Drugs. Hindi masyado nagkaunawaan. Si Miss Nicole yun, si Miss Nicole, kasi merong language barrier. So kaya ngayon gusto ng Vienna dun sa main office ng ODC, UN ODC, na mismo ang branch nila dito sa Philippines ang mag-collaborate with me in our program, Drug Free Philippines Movement. Now, kasi Tagalog speaking sila, so kapwa Pilipino tayo, so in that sense madaling magkakaintindihan kaysa dun mismo taga main nila na from United Nations na maging speaker natin. So mahirap pag merong language barrier. So ang nangyari kasi guys, okay, ayaw nila pag-usapan, okay, ayaw nila makilahok. Nag-decline sila sa yung taga main office, hindi sila nag-decline. Ito lang dito sa Pilipinas, okay? Yung mga taga UNODC Philippines ang nag-decline. Iwan ko kung bakit sila nag-decline. At ayaw nila pag-usapan yung tungkol sa program nila, since sila naman ang program nila to eh. So hindi ko maintindihan. So anyway, since nag-decline sila, at nagpapasalamat ako ni Atty. Belen kasi pinaunlakan niya tayo despite of his busy schedule from the Office of Ombudsman. Marami silang kaso doon. Inilitis lang yung mga mga corrupt public officials. Okay, marami na daw napakulong si attorney. So maraming salamat attorney na pinaunlakan mo kami na to be here in our program, makilahok sa International Anti-Day Corruption. Anyway, siguro kaya dinicline yung yung speakership nila, I think the issue of corruption here in the Philippines is very sensitive and controversial as per my observation of their silence on the matter here in the Philippines. Okay, let's continue in our program. In the Philippines, the thriving types of corruption cases are not from those which have been identified in the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption, UNCAC, such as bribery, kickbacks, abuse of functions, influence peddling, and illicit enrichment. It looks, however, at corruption in both lenses of corruption in action and corruption in inaction. Such commission of unlawful act is not sole determinant of corruption but neglect of duty and failure to act on sworn servitude to the people is also constitutive of corruption action. Okay guys? Hindi ibig sabihin na puro kickback lang or by bribery or abuse sa tungkol sa pera. Pwede pala maging corrupt pala ang isang official kung hindi siya responsive, kung hindi siya makilahok din kung anong problema sa isang tao. Okay? Hindi, ang tawag lang ito is neglect of duty and failure to act on sworn servitude, okay, to the people, considered as corruption. Okay, misbehavior by a public official, while it may not involve taking of government fund or public property, is also considered a violation of code of conduct as it connotes a negligence of duty for personal gain. Okay, gets nyo na guys. Another popular corruption case is the ghost projects. This is a trend in the infamous pork barrel scam or the Priority Development Assistance Fund, PDAF scam. A former congressman was charged with 2 counts of graft and 1 count each of malversation and of malversation through falsification in Sandigan Bayan for allegedly misusing 4.85 million in pork barrel funds on ghost projects in 2008. The Ombudsman prosecutors accused the former congressman of endorsing an accredited and unqualified non-government organizations which was selected without public bidding for purposes of undertaking livelihood projects funded by the PDAF allocations. Based on the documents, the funds were also for the purchase of hand tractors, water pumps, and grafted fruit seedlings. However, investigations revealed that the mayors of the concerned municipalities never received the farm implements. Countermeasures, the realization of justice within or beyond national borders, requires rule of law and respect for institutions, among others. Rule of law calls for adherence to well-defined legislations and allow for an impartial and non-arbitrary ruling that will facilitate fair and efficient accordance of justice and exaction of accountability. Countering corruption means countering an environment that promotes might as right and repeated oppresses society, particularly its vulnerability groups, through effective prevention strategy and programs development from broad-based partnership. In more ways than one, it is along this line that institutions combating corruption as a precursor to justice have been created. Independent constitutional commissions and bodies have been created in order to enforce accountability of the public officers. Particularly acting on these are the Civil Service Commission, Commission on Elections, Commission on Audit, Office of the Ombudsman, and others anti-corruption court, the Sandigan Bayan. Equally vital are the Office of the President, Congress, and the Supreme Court, as well as the institutions charged with execution of law, such as the Department of Justice, Department of Foreign Affairs, Anti-Money Laundering Council, and the Philippine National Police, among others. ratifying the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, at the country level. In 2006, the Philippines subscribes to its provision. In keeping with the convention, the anti-corruption measures of the country is aligned with it, as it is also aligned with the anti-corruption sections of the Philippine Development Plan. According to Mahatma Gandhi, he quotes, "Be the change you wish to see in this world. You have the power within you to create a life you want to be. You have the power to shape the world around you by who you are. We are the master of our destiny. We can influence the direct control of our environment. We can create our life we want to be. If you cannot do great things, do small things in a greater way. Don't wait. The time will never come perfect. Start where you stand and work with humility, with dignity and pride." Okay, this is the end part of our program in Drug-Free Philippines Movement. I would like to thank our speaker and co-host. I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart to Atty Belen for taking time from his busy schedule just to be here with us as a speaker in our program Drug-Free Philippines Movement. Your presence and wise words help magnify our cause in the best possible way. Our program is a huge success, all thanks to the enlightening words that inspire so many people out there. Okay, guys, I think we are all fantastic. Thank you for viewing and listening. I am looking forward that you will be sharing all your learnings to others. Have a wonderful evening. Just continue learning every day. This is your host in our program, Drug-Free Philippines Movement. Again, I am Mark Cadili, Vice President of PVAID and the CEO of Orient Visa and Immigration Services, is now saying to you, let our conscience be our guide. Wishing a pleasant evening. God bless and bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Atty Belen Jr. And also, thank you for the participants here in our program, Drug-Free Philippines Movement. Good night.